Welcome, sleepy traveler. You've arrived at a quiet space made just for you. My name is Valarie, and I am here to guide you gently into rest, to help ease your mind, soften your body, and drift you toward a peaceful, uninterrupted sleep. Whether your day was long or your thoughts feel a little too loud tonight, let this be your permission to slow down, to breathe, and to simply be. There's nothing more to do now. Just allow my voice to be your guide as we begin this gentle journey toward deep, nourishing rest. If you're new here, subscribe for sleep content like this, and like this video if you find it enjoyable. Now, let yourself arrive, not to anywhere else, just right here. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to be anywhere. This moment is yours. This breath is yours. Close your eyes gently if you haven't already, and let the world outside slowly soften into the distance. Like a shoreline you're drifting away from, growing smaller and softer with each breath. Let the space you're in hold you. Let the weight of the day melt down into the surface beneath you. Feel your body surrender moment by moment, as if gravity itself is tucking you in. Take a long, slow breath in through your nose and softly exhale out through your mouth. Let it be easy, no pressure, just breath finding its rhythm again. You may notice little thoughts drifting through. That's okay. Let them pass by like clouds. You don't need to follow them. You don't need to change them. Just let them float. In this space, there's nowhere to go, nothing to fix, nothing to change, only a gentle, quiet invitation to return to yourself. Let your breath guide you like a slow-moving tide, rising and falling in and out, soft and calm. As you breathe in, imagine drawing in a soft, silvery light. And as you breathe out, let go of anything heavy. Let go of anything sharp or tired. This moment is safe. You are safe, held, cradled by this quiet. Let your shoulders drop just a little more. Unclench the jaw, soften your forehead. Feel your hands resting wherever they are, completely supported, doing nothing, just being. Let the belly rise softly with each breath and fall like a leaf floating gently to the earth. With every breath, invite ease. With every breath, let peace arrive a little more. If your mind wanders, greet it kindly, and with a gentle hand, guide your focus back to your breath, back to this stillness. Tonight is not about effort, it's about surrender. It's about remembering your softness, your gentleness. Even the stars outside rest. Even the moon waxes and wanes, not always full, not always bright. And still, it is enough. Let that truth reach you. You don't need to be anything other than what you are, right now. This moment is whole. Imagine a gentle warmth now, beginning at the crown of your head. A soft glow like moonlight poured into you. Let that light melt down, over your forehead, down behind your eyes, unwinding your thoughts. It flows down your cheeks, melting into your jaw, your neck, your shoulders. Anywhere that feels tight, this glow softens. Anywhere holding weight, this glow lifts. Feel it wash down through your arms, into your elbows, your wrists, your hands, all the way to the tips of your fingers. You may feel a little tingling now, a sign your body is relaxing, welcoming rest. Let the warmth flow across your chest, around your back like a blanket of starlight. Let your ribs move gently with your breath, no rush, no effort, only ease. Feel the glow drift down through your belly, bringing a feeling of safety, of grounding, of being home in yourself. Let it pour through your hips, your legs, all the way through your knees, your calves, your ankles, and into your feet. From head to toe, you are wrapped in peace, cradled in quiet. The world will wait, but this moment, this night is yours. Breathe in and out again and again, so gently. You are not alone in your stillness. There are others breathing right now too, finding rest beside you in the quiet of night. We are all part of something soft, something unseen, something shared. A soft wave of peace moves over you again, lulling your mind into ease, lulling your body into stillness. Every cell of you is relaxing, every part of you is coming home. If you notice your thoughts again, just breathe. They're only clouds, and you are the sky. Let the sky stretch wide within you, open, quiet, endless. In this sky, you are free to rest, free to be. There is nothing you need to prove, nothing you need to solve. This time is your sanctuary, a gentle return to peace. You've arrived, not anywhere outside but within. Your body knows how to rest. It remembers this rhythm. Let the quiet deepen now. Let your breath fade into stillness. You don't have to listen closely anymore. The words can blur. The voice can become a soft hum in the background of your dreams. You are safe to drift. You are safe to let go. The night is your companion now, and she is gentle. She is kind. There will be dreams if they come, and peace if they don't. Either way, you are where you need to be. Wrapped in breath, held by night, and carried softly into sleep. Stay here, stay soft, and let go, just a little more. You step barefoot onto a path of soft moss, the gentle give beneath your feet like memory foam kissed by moonlight. Above, the sky stretches open and endless, scattered with stars so bright they look as though someone dusted the heavens with powdered sugar. The air is cool but kind, brushing against your skin with the softness of twilight. A forest stands ahead, but not one that feels wild or untamed. This forest feels old in the best way, wise, calm, deeply familiar. You take a step forward and then another, the moss cushioning each movement, your breath sinking effortlessly with the hush of the world around you. The trees welcome you with a soft rustle, leaves whispering like old friends reunited after a long while. Their trunks are wide and warm with bark that glows faintly in the silver wash of starlight. You pause beside one, resting your palm against it, and it hums a soft warmth into your hand, like it remembers you. You continue walking, your pace slow, unhurried. There is no destination, no deadline, only this moment and the next. Somewhere ahead, the gentle gurgle of a brook joins the evening's lullaby. The path guides you to it, a ribbon of clear water weaving through smooth stones, glistening under the night sky. You kneel and touch the surface. It is cool, refreshing, and somehow calming to your very core. Dragonflies drift low above the water, their wings catching moonbeams and scattering them like tiny shards of glass. You watch for a moment, mesmerized by their rhythm, then rise to continue. As you walk on, a low mist curls around your ankles, swirling like a shy animal eager for your presence. You are not alone, though nothing frightens you here. This forest has chosen to keep you company tonight, wrapping you in its quiet, protective embrace. Up ahead, the trees begin to thin, and between them, a meadow opens like a sigh. The grass is tall and golden, bowing gently in the breeze. Fireflies blink lazily across the field, their glow pulsing like sleepy heartbeats. You wade into the grass, your hands brushing the soft stalks. Each touch seems to release a faint scent, lavender, chamomile, and something lightly sweet like warm milk. At the meadow's center stands an ancient oak tree. Its branches sprawl wide like open arms. Its trunk is vast and hollowed at the base, just enough to shelter a small resting place. Inside, there is a thick blanket made of woven feathers and moss. Without hesitation, you step in, curl up, and let the tree cradle you. You feel the weight of your body sink gently into the softness, the earth below perfectly contoured to your shape. Above, the canopy sways, and between the leaves, stars peek in, watchful, protective, quiet. You close your eyes for a moment. Then a gentle breeze moves through, carrying with it a quiet hum, almost a song, almost a memory. You recognize it, though you're not sure from where. It's the sound of calm, of nights long ago, of childhood lullabies and the hush of stories told by firelight. The tree seems to breathe with you. Each inhale lifts you slightly, and each exhale sinks you deeper into stillness. You are not just in the forest now, you are part of it. A leaf drifts down and settles on your shoulder, light as a sigh. The scent of cedar and cool night air wraps around you like a dream. Somewhere, far off, an owl calls once and then again, its voice soft and low, as if it's telling you everything is safe. You shift slightly in your nest, letting every muscle soften. The world outside your resting space slows. Even time seems to tiptoe. You drift deeper now. And as you do, a dream begins to unfold, not abrupt or vivid, but like watercolor seeping into your thoughts. In this dream, you are a feather on the breeze. You float above the forest, weightless, drifting where the wind invites you. Below, the trees sway with you, as if dancing to the rhythm of your path. You pass over lakes smooth as glass, their surfaces reflecting moon and sky in perfect detail. You sail over hills, dipped in silver light, and meadows where deer look up as you pass, curious but unafraid. You feel no need to land. The wind carries you gently with purpose and peace. You are still and moving all at once. And then the feather floats down once more, slowly spiraling until it comes to rest, back in your body, back in the hollow of the oak. You feel your chest rise and fall, calm and steady. Your limbs are heavy now, resting fully into the forest's embrace. The oak tree watches over you, patient and wise. Its roots dig deep into the soil, anchoring you to this moment of perfect stillness. You sense the presence of the creatures of the night, not near, but close enough to know you are not alone. They live their quiet lives around you, trusting you as much as you trust them. And the fireflies, those soft golden guardians, still drift lazily outside your shelter, blinking you deeper and deeper into rest. Everything in you softens. Even your thoughts become gentle, like petals settling on water. If a thought does arise, it passes by like a cloud in the sky. You are free to observe it or simply let it go. There is nothing you need to do now. Nothing to fix, nothing to finish. You are safe, and the night is long and kind. With each breath, you drift deeper, like a leaf sinking into a quiet pond. Every sound, the wind, the brook, the distant call of the owl is part of your lullaby. They exist only to remind you how deeply you can rest. Your body, your mind, your heart, all growing still, all settling into the quiet hum of the forest's rhythm. And now the stars begin to fade slightly, giving way to the gentle darkness behind your eyes. You are cocooned in this peaceful place where even dreams drift slowly like snowflakes in still air. No rush, no effort, just ease. The tree, the meadow, the sky, all watching over you as you continue to drift. You are floating between the worlds now, the waking and the dreaming. And the dreaming begins to win. Each breath is deeper. Each muscle more relaxed. And your mind, so ready to rest, finds stillness in the silence. Let yourself go there. Let yourself sink further. The story continues without effort. The forest will hold you. The sky will shelter you. The earth will cradle you. Sleep is here. And you are ready. Everything fades now, softly, slowly, sweetly, until all that remains is breath and stillness and peace. The rain started before I even opened the curtains. I heard it, soft and steady, like a gentle murmur against the window pane. It reminded me of my grandmother's knitting needles, clicking quietly beside the fireplace in her drafty cottage when I was a child. There was comfort in that rhythm, in the way it filled the room with something soft but certain. I wrapped my cardigan tighter around me as I stepped closer to the window of my apartment. The glass was fogged, kissed by the sudden change in temperature. Outside, the courtyard was muted, damp stone, ivy-heavy walls, and the blurred outline of potted plants shivering slightly in the wind. And there, directly across the way, on the 4th floor of the opposite building, was a message, scrawled in a finger's careful arc across the misted glass. Rainy days make good listeners. I froze, my breath catching in a way I hadn't felt in months. It was the sort of sentence I might scribble in the margins of my sketchbook when I didn't know what else to draw. The kind of phrase that felt like a secret, even if it wasn't addressed to anyone in particular. I leaned forward just a little, careful not to smudge the fog on my side of the glass. The message was written on the top right window, the one with pale linen curtains pulled half shut. I'd never seen who lived there, not exactly. Shadows sometimes, the flicker of lamplight at odd hours. Once I thought I'd seen a cat curled on the sill, but it was gone before I could really look. I stared at the words for a while, hand resting on the cool pane. I didn't smile. Smiling had been harder lately. But something inside me shifted. Not quite warmth, not quite recognition, but something close to both. By noon the mist had cleared, and so had the message. But it lingered with me, while I brewed tea, while I sketched the rough outlines of a book cover for a children's story I'd been commissioned to illustrate, while I listened to the radiator click and hum to itself like it always did when the air turned damp. The next morning the sky was still gray. The clouds hung low and heavy over the rooftops, and sure enough, rain tapped politely on the panes again. I took my tea, mug chipped on the handle the way I liked it, and walked to the window. The linen curtains across the way were closed now. The pane was blank. Still, I lifted my finger to the glass, my own side. I didn't think, I just wrote. And stories need a quiet place to land. The fog on my side wasn't as thick, but the letters stood out clear enough. I paused when I finished, studying the curve of my handwriting, smaller than theirs, more slanted. It felt like I was sending a paper boat across the courtyard, fragile, hopeful. I left it there, walked away before I could feel foolish. The truth is, I'd spent the last few months in silence, and not by accident. My world had become so still that sometimes I feared I might disappear inside it. Working from home as an illustrator gave me an excuse. No coworkers, no commutes, no small talk in elevators or at coffee shops. But the real reason was quieter than all that. I just didn't know how to be with people anymore, not in a way that didn't leave me feeling more alone afterward. But now, this fogged-up exchange, it nudged something in me, like someone had found the volume knob on my quiet and turned it just a little to the right. The next day the weather held, more rain, and this time a new message appeared. Then we are two stories, softly landing. My heart did something strange when I read it. I pressed my fingertips to the glass as if I could touch the words. My tea sat forgotten on the counter. It felt, childish to say, but it felt like a kind of magic. Over the next week, the rain became our co-conspirator. Each morning I rose early, sometimes before dawn, just to see if there would be something new. And most mornings there was. Ever wonder if windows dream? Only of wind. I miss the sound of someone humming while cooking. I hum when I chop carrots, off-key but committed. We never named ourselves, never signed a message. But in those slow exchanges, a thread spun itself between our buildings, fine and silken. I imagined it drifting over the courtyard like a cobweb lit by morning light, invisible to anyone else. One morning I woke late and found a sketch waiting. Not words this time, but a charcoal drawing. A small cat curled on a windowsill, watching raindrops slide down the glass. I laughed out loud, surprising myself. I found an old sketch I'd done of a fox wrapped in a scarf, perched atop a toadstool, looking wistfully at a falling leaf. I copied it in pen and pressed it to my side of the window. The next day, a squirrel in a raincoat, holding a paper umbrella. I sat on the floor beneath the window, knees drawn to my chest, and stared at the opposite pane for a long time. My face reflected in the glass beside the squirrel, pale and still. But my eyes, there was something new there, a glimmer. I tried to sketch that look later in the corner of a page. I didn't quite get it right. Sometimes I imagined what they might look like. My window friend. Were they tall, quiet like me? Did they also eat toast over the sink because washing plates felt like too much some days? Were they working from home too, surrounded by half-finished books or canvases or cups of tea that had gone cold? Maybe they were lonely too. Not in the dramatic way, but in that quiet, creeping way that settles into your chest like fog. One rainy afternoon I wrote, "Do you ever feel like you're waiting for something and you don't know what it is?" It stayed up all day. I wondered if I'd crossed a line, if I'd made it too personal. But the next morning their reply was waiting. Yes, every day. But it feels better knowing you're waiting too. I touched the glass again, just once, and when I walked away my eyes were wet. Not from sadness exactly, just from the ache of being seen. The days passed in soft rhythms. My work still came in, book covers, illustrations, character sketches, but now I found myself drawing with a new tenderness. I filled the margins of my sketchbooks with little scenes I'd never show clients. Mice with umbrellas, foxes writing letters, hedgehogs staring at the moon. Each one felt like a secret message to the stranger who wasn't quite a stranger anymore. Then came the day I forgot to check. It wasn't intentional. I'd stayed up too late working on a deadline, drinking too much chamomile tea and listening to storm winds rattle the windows. When I woke, the rain had cleared. The courtyard was bright for once, sunlight bouncing off puddles like coins scattered across cobblestone. I wandered to the window on instinct, expecting nothing, but there it was. A single sentence in slightly smudged script. One day I hope to say hello. I stared at it for a long time. My heart beat a little faster, not with fear, but with something tender and open. I took a breath. My finger hovered over the glass. I didn't know what to write. I finally traced. Me too, just not today. It felt honest, and somehow I knew they'd understand. The message remained there all day. Neither of us erased it. The next morning the pain was blank, but I didn't feel the usual pang, because now I knew. Somewhere across that courtyard, someone else was sketching their way through the fog too. And even if we never spoke aloud, our stories had already landed, in the mist, in the quiet, and in each other. And that for now was enough. They say windows are for looking out, but lately mine has become something else entirely. A canvas, a stage, a mirror to parts of myself I forgot were still awake. It started with a single sentence, scrawled in reverse through condensation on the window across the courtyard. Rainy days make good listeners. I replied the next morning, tracing my finger along the glass. And stories need a quiet place to land. Since then, something in me has been shifting, quietly and steadily, like a tide coming in. Now, each rainy morning I make tea and wait. Not impatiently, more like expectantly, the way you do with an unopened letter or the moment before a bird takes flight. The mist thickens, the rooftops blur, and I sit cross-legged at the window, my sketch pad resting on the windowsill, steam curling from my mug. And almost always, there's something waiting. Sometimes it's a quote. Last Wednesday, all that we see or seem is but a dream within a dream. Poe. Sometimes it's a drawing, like the tiny fox curled beneath a tree, one paw raised as if waving to me. Yesterday I wrote back, "He looks like he belongs to both of us." A few minutes later, the reply came, "He's yours between the raindrops." That made me laugh aloud, startling the cat, who promptly knocked over a jar of pencils in protest. It's ridiculous in a way. I don't know this person's name. I don't even know what they look like. Their apartment sits diagonally across the courtyard, a window just like mine. Same trim, same dusty glass, same fogged panes on damp mornings. Only theirs is sometimes lit by the warm gold of a desk lamp or the glow of a candle. A cozy, flickering sort of light that makes the whole world feel quieter. I've tried to catch a glimpse of them, but all I see are shadows and reflections. Moments, not faces. Once a sleeve passed through the light. A wool cardigan, I think, navy blue. Another time I thought I saw hair, short and a bit messy, but it was gone before I could be sure. part of me wonders if I want to know who they are. Maybe the magic is in not knowing. Still, curiosity has its way of tugging at the corners of your heart, doesn't it? It's been 3 weeks since the first message. I keep a sketchbook now just for our exchanges. I've taped in a pressed clover, copied their quotes in watercolor, even drawn a window between pages, mine and theirs, connected by ribbons of wind and ink. This morning the message read, "Ever feel like the world only makes sense when it rains?" I smiled and wrote back, "Yes, like the sky is softening on your behalf." I watched as they paused, just a stillness behind the glass. Then slowly, carefully, they drew a tiny umbrella, tilted sideways, sheltering a small figure curled up beneath it. There was something about that drawing that made my throat tighten. I hadn't realized how much I'd been craving that. Someone who doesn't ask for explanations, who offers shelter with the gentleness of a sketch. I reached for my pencil. Below their umbrella I drew a teacup. Steam curling upward, safety, warmth, familiarity, an offering. We sat like that, 2 silhouettes behind separate panes of glass, separated by distance and drizzle, but somehow not alone. That afternoon I tried something different. I positioned my chair just so, angled enough to look as if I wasn't watching, but still able to peer across the courtyard. I picked up my brush and began to paint. An autumn tree, brittle leaves clinging like whispered secrets. But my gaze kept drifting. They were there. Backlit by lamplight, a figure moved softly through the room. Slender, maybe tall? It was hard to tell. They carried a mug, maybe coffee, maybe tea, and paused at their own window. For a heartbeat I thought they were looking at me, but then their head tilted downward, focused on the glass. Words began to form again. I leaned closer. Do you ever miss someone you've never met? My breath caught. It was a beautiful ache, that question, and oddly familiar. I pressed my hand against the cold glass and traced my reply. Yes. It feels like remembering something from a dream. I waited. No movement. Just the hum of rain. Then their curtain shifted slightly, and for the first time, I thought I saw a smile. Or maybe I imagined it. Maybe I wanted to imagine it. Over the next week, the rain returned in fits and starts. Every time it did, so did our ritual. Once they drew a paper boat and wrote, "Let's float our worries downstream." I replied with a puddle sketch where a tiny reflection waved back. I think mine learned to swim. We sent poems, riddles, once even a haiku battle. Their syllables were better than mine. I graciously conceded with a doodle of a white flag made of yarn, fluttering in surrender. But in the quiet moments between our window conversations, I began to feel a longing I couldn't quite name. I'd catch myself standing near the glass even when it wasn't raining, waiting for a message that wouldn't come. Sunlight made the window too clear, too stark. It was as if the mystery couldn't breathe without fog. I missed the blur, the softness, the in-between. One night, unable to sleep, I lit a candle and curled up on the couch. Sketchbook in my lap, I began to draw. Our two windows, the rain, the figures behind them. And then, impulsively, I added a line I hadn't intended. Will we ever meet? I stared at it for a long time, heart tapping out a soft rhythm of worry. It wasn't that I needed to know, but something in me, some fluttery part, wanted to see if the magic could stretch into the real world, or if it lived only in the mist. I didn't put it on the window. I wasn't that brave. Not yet. Instead, I tucked the sketch between the pages of my notebook and went to bed, the rain still whispering against the glass like a secret too shy to say aloud. The next morning I found a message already waiting. Not all stories are meant to be solved. Some are meant to be felt. There was a feather sketched below it. Light, unanchored, floating. I traced my finger over the words and felt something like both comfort and disappointment rise in my chest. They were right, of course, but still. That afternoon, the rain stopped and the world turned sharply bright. Too bright. I closed the curtains. But that evening, just after dusk, I caught movement. Their window lit up briefly, then flickered off. A moment later, another light came on, soft and golden. A candle, I think. They appeared again, just a shape, just a moment, and then, against the pane, a message. Even clear skies can hold quiet conversations. I grinned. I hadn't expected that. Quickly, I grabbed a dry erase marker. Condensation or not, I was going to reply. Then let's make the stars jealous. We left it at that. Something's happening to me. Not just in the romanticized, maybe I'm falling for a shadow kind of way, but something deeper. I feel more alive than I have in months, maybe years. I've started painting again. Not just commissions, not just the safe, still lifes I usually sell on Etsy, but real things, strange things, dreamlike, magical, full of fog and windows and lanterns that hover above rivers, a world with soft edges and messages that travel between raindrops. It's like this stranger, this kindred window soul has reminded me how to feel curious again, how to be present in the mystery. It doesn't have to make sense. It just has to make something stir. Tonight, I've left a little gift. On my windowsill sits a tiny origami crane, folded from watercolor paper. On its wing, I wrote in small letters, "For when the rain won't come." It's silly, maybe, but I hope they see it. I hope it means something. I sit in the quiet, watching their window. The lamp flickers on, their silhouette appears. A pause. Then, with slow, deliberate motion, they hold something up to the glass. A paper crane, deep blue, with a silver thread tied around its neck like a ribbon. And I swear, though I can't be sure, I see them nod, just once. The kind of nod that says, "I see you too." And in that moment, the glass between us feels a little less solid, the courtyard a little less wide. Not quite love, not quite friendship, but something rare and unfinished. A story still unfolding, one rainy pane at a time. The rain came down in soft sheets that morning, tracing silver veins down the window pane. I sat curled on my couch, knees pulled to my chest, fingers wrapped around the chipped blue mug that had become my morning companion. Earl Grey steeped in quiet swirls, warming my palms, but not the hollow ache in my chest, because the window across the courtyard was blank. No fog-curled letters, no ink-drawn sketches, no pieces of another soul reaching out across the rain. I told myself maybe it was too warm. Maybe the glass hadn't fogged properly. Maybe they were sleeping in. But my heart didn't believe me. Not really. I waited until noon, the sky still a dull gray canvas, then finally padded to my own window and pressed my fingers gently against the cool glass. The breath came naturally, fogging up a corner. I wiped it once, then slowly wrote, "Are you okay?" It felt small, helpless even, but it was honest. I lingered there for a while, tracing the words like a prayer, hoping the rain might carry them farther than I could see. The next day, I woke to the sound of thunder in the distance, low and rolling like a memory. I moved cautiously, as though any abrupt movement might somehow break the spell of this fragile ritual. My tea stayed on the counter as I moved straight to the window. Breath caught somewhere in my ribs. There, scrawled in the soft mist, were 5 words. Sorry, just a hard day. My exhale fogged the glass again. Something in my chest loosened. They were okay. Maybe not good, but okay. That mattered more than I realized. I pressed my forehead lightly against the window, the chill grounding me, and whispered, "I'm here, even through glass." Then I wrote it. "I'm here, even through glass." It lingered for a moment before blurring at the edges, condensation reclaiming the space, like even the words needed to disappear into mist sometimes. That evening I took out my journal, the one with the linen cover and speckled pages, the one I never seemed to fill with anything real. I opened to a fresh page and began to sketch the scene. The facing windows, the fog, the tiny moments that now lived like whispers between us. I gave the figure across the way a shadowy form. No face, just presence. A quiet silhouette that held the weight of connection without revealing too much. It was the first time in weeks I'd felt anything close to steady. The next morning the window surprised me, not with a sketch, not with a quote, but with a name. My name is Eli. I stared at the letters for a long while, as though saying them aloud might make the moment more real. Eli. There was something grounded in the name, kind but steady. I smiled, actually smiled, then wrote back beneath it, Amber. Just that, simple, honest, enough. We were no longer strangers. After that, something changed. The messages still came, but they were warmer now, less like passing notes in a bottle and more like late-night talks over dim candlelight. On Thursday, I found this waiting. "Do you ever draw the rain?" I smiled as I replied, "All the time. It listens best." I taped a tiny drawing to the window that afternoon, one of my favorite pages from the journal. A girl curled in a blanket, watching droplets race like tiny stories down a pane of glass. The kind of sketch I'd never shown anyone before, a piece of me. The next day I found something unexpected, a taped page in return, a pencil sketch, gentle, almost hesitant lines, a foggy window, a cup of tea, a cat curled on a windowsill. I didn't know Eli had a cat, or could draw, or that seeing their version of comfort would make my throat tighten. We didn't need many words after that. Sometimes the messages were simple. "Storm tonight. Hope you like thunder." Fell asleep at my desk. Woke to sunlight in a cold mug. Do you ever feel like the sky is talking just to you? I started marking the days in my journal not by dates, but by our exchanges. Tuesday. They said they liked the smell of rain on pavement. Wednesday, I told them I paint better when it's cloudy. Friday, they asked what scares me. That one took me longer to answer. I didn't write it on the window. I wrote it in the journal first. Being forgotten, being seen too clearly, both, maybe. Eventually I worked up the courage to write on the pane. Silence when it's heavy. You? The next morning I found people who pretend not to see, and being stuck. There was something in those words that made me sit with my breath held for too long. I started to wonder more about who Eli really was, what they looked like, what color their eyes were, whether they traced the raindrops with their fingers the way I did. But I didn't ask. Not yet. It felt too delicate to name the unknown. One night, lightning danced like silver veins across the sky. I couldn't sleep. I wrapped myself in my thickest cardigan, lit the little candle on the windowsill, and sketched. I drew their window across from mine, added raindrops, a fogged message, a shadow behind the curtain. Then I turned the page, and for the first time I imagined Eli's side. I drew what I hoped they saw, a quiet girl with messy hair, tea always nearby, and too many unfinished drawings. A girl who had grown used to the hush of solitude, but had found something brave in reaching through the fog. I finished it with two simple words scrawled in the mist between the windows. Not alone. The next morning, the fog hadn't arrived yet. The window was just glass. No words, no condensation. Only the faint reflection of the morning sky behind me. I stood there for a long while, unsure of what to do with the stillness. But just as I turned away, something caught the corner of my eye. It was faint, scribbled low near the sill. Almost missed it. I like your candlelight. I blinked. It wasn't written in the usual neat lettering. It was rushed, smudged at the edges. Like maybe Eli had caught a glimpse of my candlelit night and left the message before it could fade. I smiled and quickly breathed fog into the glass. I leave it on for you. And I meant it. The days that followed were a strange, beautiful rhythm. Sometimes there were no messages, just the knowing that someone else was there. Sometimes we swapped sketches, sometimes words, sometimes song lyrics or memories or weather updates that meant more than they should have. I learned Eli likes old jazz and used to play piano before it started to feel like too much. That they once drove across the country in a beat-up van just to see a meteor shower. That they sometimes still dream in black and white. I shared that I collect forgotten objects from thrift stores and imagine their stories. That my favorite book is one I've never let anyone borrow. That I used to be afraid of thunderstorms, until I realized how beautifully honest they are. And slowly I realized that I was letting someone see the truest parts of me. Through glass, through fog, through silence and storms. Then one morning, no fog again. But this time I didn't panic. I made my tea, sat at the window, waited. Just as the clouds broke open, the glass cooled enough to show this. Would you ever want to meet? My heart skipped. Not in fear, not exactly, but in the kind of way that means something important is shifting. I didn't write back right away. Instead, I sat with it, breathed it in, let it flutter inside my ribs. When I finally pressed my hand to the window, I smiled, and I wrote, "Yes, but maybe not yet." Below it, I added, "Let's stay here a little longer." The reply came hours later, long after I thought the moment had passed. "Okay, I like it here." So did I. We stayed in our misty little world, where time softened and names meant something more than introductions, where silence wasn't empty, it was shared, where the storm could rage and rattle the windows, but somehow I felt steadier than I had in a long, long time. One morning, I pressed my fingers to the glass and simply wrote, "Thank you for seeing me." The reply came with the next passing cloud, gentle and sure. "You're the easiest thing to see." And for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt found. It began with a cactus, a stubby little thing with a tiny pink bloom that sat quietly on my windowsill. I hadn't watered it in weeks. It somehow survived me, which made it feel noble in a strange, stubborn way. One fog-washed morning, I drew its silhouette in the condensation, 2 awkward arms and a tiny flower. The next day, his reply appeared across the courtyard, a very poorly drawn version of the same cactus, this time with a thought bubble that read, "I think I like her." I laughed out loud, real belly-shaking laughter, the kind that feels rare and physical. like stumbling on a warm patch of sunlight after too many gray days. I answered with 3 dots and a smiley face. That same evening, a shape moved behind the glass in his apartment. Not a person, just the flicker of candlelight. And something small leapt onto the windowsill. A cat. Fluffy, white, regal. It blinked slowly at me, as if I were the one intruding. I pressed my fingertip to the glass in greeting. The cat did not reciprocate. The next morning his message read, "Meet Clementine. She's judgmental but loyal." I replied, "She has standards. I respect her." That day I lit a candle on my own windowsill, lavender and vanilla, and left the blinds open wider than usual. Not enough to reveal myself, but enough to be seen if he really wanted to. His message the next day. "Nice candle. Yours smells better than mine. Probably. Mine smells like old library and regret." I wrote back, "Regret is a surprisingly comforting scent." And so it went. Each morning I looked forward to the mist and the messages. Sometimes they were silly, sometimes quiet. But lately they had started to stretch into something deeper, threading themselves into the hushed corners of my days. He asked, "What's something no one knows about you?" It startled me. I paused, pen hovering over the notepad I used to draft my reply before committing it to the glass. I wrote, "Sometimes I stare at blank pages and wonder if I've used up all the good parts of me." The reply came the next morning. Just one sentence. "I think the best parts of you are still fermenting." Fermenting, strange and perfect, like sourdough and poetry. That was the first time I cried because of a window. We began syncing our routines without realizing it. Or maybe we did realize it and just didn't say anything. I'd make my coffee and see the glow of his kettle flicker through the fogged glass. I'd light a candle, and a few seconds later his flame would appear like a soft echo. One night I placed my sketchbook on the windowsill, spine open, a page half filled with ink. The next day, he left a page of music in his window, scribbled lines, unfinished lyrics. We were 2 ghosts orbiting the same space, bound by vapor and ink. One evening, I heard rain tapping the roof like a gentle warning. I made tea and sat by the window, hoping the fog would thicken just enough to invite a message. It came. Ever love someone so much you forgot what your name sounded like without theirs? The words thudded in my chest. I thought of Daniel, of the way his laugh used to fill a room, of how I had shaped myself around his dreams like clay until I forgot where my edges began, of how, when it ended, I walked through a year of days with a name that didn't quite fit anymore. I replied slowly, "Yes," and then had to relearn how to pronounce myself. The next day, his message simply read, "Thank you for saying that. It helped." Then in smaller letters below, "Her name was May. She liked moths and jazz. I didn't know how to hold her grief, so she flew away." I didn't know what to write back at first. Anything I drafted felt too heavy or too light. So I wrote what I knew. Sometimes flying away is the only way to find the ground again. It was strange how deeply I began to know him. I didn't know his last name, not really what he looked like. I'd caught glimpses, his silhouette brushing past the glass, the curve of his jaw when the morning sun hit just right. But those moments were like trying to remember a dream after you've already opened your eyes. And yet I knew that he drank his coffee black but added honey on Sundays, that he played piano but only after midnight, that he had a scar on his wrist from a childhood fall and once wrote an entire novella about two chairs that fall in love across a dance studio. He knew that I illustrated children's books but hadn't finished one in over a year, that I wore mismatched socks because it made me feel quietly rebellious, that I still wrote letters to my grandmother, even though she'd passed 2 winters ago. We were strange confessions, quiet rituals, emotional time travelers, parallel hearts. One afternoon, I watched a storm roll in, the kind that comes with no warning, just darkening sky and the scent of electric tension. I sat by the window with a blanket and stared at the raindrops, hoping. The message was already waiting when I looked up. What if we only know each other like this? The question wrapped around me like a chill. What if? What if the glass stayed between us, always? What if the fog one day didn't come? What if this beautiful, strange, almost love evaporated the way morning mist does, without warning, without goodbye? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I went to my desk and sketched. I drew 2 figures, one seated on each side of a glass window, hands pressed to the pane. Above them, the fog curled like invisible threads connecting their thoughts. I left their faces mostly blank, only the eyes detailed, curious, aching, hopeful. Underneath, I wrote, "Sometimes windows are enough. Sometimes they aren't. I haven't decided which this is yet." The next morning, his reply, "Maybe the point isn't deciding. Maybe the point is feeling something again." And then below it, "P.S. Clementine knocked over my candle last night. She sends no regrets." There was a comfort in the way we always circled back to softness, as if our confessions needed something light to land on, like how a feather needs air to drift and not fall. One fog-heavy morning, I drew a tiny heart in the corner of the window. I wasn't sure why, just felt like leaving something tender behind. I walked away before I could second-guess it. That night I returned to find a reply, not words this time. A music note, a single 8th note with a stem bent slightly to the left, playful and gentle. Next to it, a sketch of my cactus, this time with 2 flowers. The days grew colder. I began layering my sweaters and Clementine began curling tighter in the windowsill. I knew, without needing to ask, that winter was coming for us both. One night I lit 3 candles, poured a glass of red wine, and curled up beneath a knitted blanket. The window stayed dark, no music, no shadows, just the soft, flickering hush of my room. I stared at the glass for a long time, willing the mist to rise. Eventually, I wrote, "Are you okay?" and waited. I don't know how long I sat there, long enough for the wine to go warm and the room to cool around me. Nothing. But the next morning, just as the fog began to lace the glass, a message appeared. "Sorry, just a hard day." I pressed my fingers to the pane, wrote, "I'm here, even through glass." His reply came slowly, written over the course of the morning as the mist clung and faded. "My name is Eli." I stared at it, just 4 letters, but it felt like he'd handed me a key. I stood there, heart suddenly louder than the rain outside. Then I wrote, "Amber." We stared at each other through fog and silence and everything unsaid. And somehow it felt like the beginning again. I never realized how much I depended on the rain until it stopped. It came slowly at first, the clouds lightening, the air warming. Then the skies cleared altogether, stretching blue and unbroken above the courtyard. No mist, no fog, no canvas on the glass. The windows across from mine, once ethereal and blurred by breath and weather, were now sharply outlined, reflecting only sunlight and the occasional fluttering curtain. Eli was gone, at least in the way I'd come to know him. I kept expecting him. Each morning I brewed my coffee, lit the same cedarwood candle, and turned toward the window like a ritual. I brought my sketchbook to the table, hoping to pass the time with something productive, but nothing came. No sketches, no words, no response. The first day was denial. I told myself he was just sleeping in, that maybe the morning sun had woken him earlier, and he'd gone for a walk, that I'd missed his message because I hadn't looked fast enough. I checked the window every hour anyway, just in case. The second day turned to hope, quiet, persistent hope. I wrote little things on my own window. Sunshine doesn't erase quiet hearts. I'm still listening. I even drew a small cactus in marker, just like mine, the one he'd once commented on. But no reply came. By the 4th day, I stopped writing. I sat at the table with my coffee and watched the empty window like someone waiting for a ghost. It felt ridiculous, this ache over a person I had never technically met. But our exchanges had become part of my rhythm, soft, sacred, and strange. And now that rhythm was broken. It was as though I'd been dancing with someone I couldn't see, only to find the music had stopped, and I was left twirling alone. So I began to write. Not on the window this time, but on paper. A letter. One I wasn't sure I'd ever send. Dear Eli, I don't know where you are, or if you're still behind that glass watching the same empty courtyard. I don't even know what your face looks like. I only know your handwriting, the curve of your sketches, and the shape of your honesty. It's been 4 days since the rain stopped, and everything feels too loud. I miss the fog. I miss the way our thoughts used to drift across the glass like echoes from another world. I miss waking up and wondering what you might share next. I don't know if I'm writing this because I expect an answer, or just because it hurts not to. But I want you to know I'm still here, even if the windows stay clear forever, even if this was all we were meant to have. Thank you for reminding me that connection can grow in the quiet, that even through glass we can still reach each other. Wherever you are, I hope the rain finds you again, and when it does, I'll be here, still listening. Amber. I folded the letter and tucked it beneath the cactus pot on my windowsill, a place both visible and hidden, just like our entire connection had been. Then I let the days move on without me. The 5th day felt cruel in its brightness. I stayed inside most of the afternoon, curled up under a blanket with a book I never really read. My phone buzzed with messages I didn't have the energy to answer. The world outside buzzed with life, but it wasn't the kind I wanted. I missed the hush of water against glass. I missed the mist, the softness, the invitation. By the 6th day, I'd convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing, that maybe I'd created Eli out of loneliness, out of a need to be seen without being touched. The thought unsettled me more than I cared to admit. But on the 7th day, just as I was beginning to grieve what hadn't ended so much as evaporated, the clouds returned. At first it was just a haze on the horizon, a softness around the edges of the afternoon. Then the sky deepened to gray, and the familiar scent of petrichor filled the air. The moment the first raindrop hit the window, I was there, nose practically pressed to the glass, heart pounding like it was opening a door. The fog built slowly. It spread across the courtyard window like breath returning to a cold surface. I waited, barely daring to hope. And then, I'm sorry I vanished. The words were faint, wobbly with moisture, like they'd been written with trembling fingers. I exhaled so hard it felt like I'd been holding my breath for days. Then, almost immediately beneath it, "Thank you for waiting." I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my marker and scribbled fast. "You scared me, Storm Boy. Glad you're back." I watched as his message vanished in the mist, replaced by another, slowly. Hard week. Couldn't write. Didn't want to bring the storm inside. I stared at it for a long time. That sentence alone was enough to break my heart in two and mend it all over again. Next time, just say weather advisory. I'll know what it means. You don't have to go silent. There was a pause, a longer one than usual. I imagined him standing on the other side, brow furrowed, thumb hesitating over the glass. And then, finally, "I'll remember that. I didn't know if you'd still be here." That struck something deep. I wasn't going anywhere. I wrote, "Not unless you close the window." He replied with a simple sketch, a mug of coffee, steam rising in swirling curls, and next to it a tiny cactus. I laughed, and something loosened in my chest. My hands trembled as I drew back, two mugs clinking gently together, steam mingling in the middle. Then, for the first time since all this began, a shape moved behind the fog. I blinked. A hand lifted, hesitantly, and waved. I froze. My pulse quickened. Then I raised mine and waved back. It was brief, tentative, almost shy. But it was real, not a sketch, not a line of poetry or a cryptic quote or a whispered confession drawn in condensation. A wave, from him to me. I don't know how long I sat there after that. The rain thickened, washing the windows in sheets of water. Messages blurred, drawings vanished, but none of it mattered anymore. We'd seen each other, even just the outline of a hand, even just through the veil of a storm, and somehow it was enough. That night I pulled the letter back out from beneath the cactus. I didn't need to send it anymore. Instead, I slipped it into my journal between the pages of our earliest exchanges, pressed like a memory I didn't want to forget. The next morning the courtyard smelled of wet stone and new beginnings. When I stepped into my kitchen, coffee in hand, I found the window already fogged. Eli had drawn something new, a sun peeking from behind a rain cloud. Underneath it the words, "Not all sunshine is empty." I traced a smile across my lips and picked up my pen. Not all rain is sad. And underneath that, after a moment's pause, let's keep writing, even when the weather changes. Through the mist a thumbs up appeared, followed by a small heart, not the kind drawn out of obligation, the kind someone leaves when they mean it but don't quite know how else to say it. The kind that says, "I see you." The kind that says, "I'm still here." I pressed my hand to the glass, not expecting a return gesture, just feeling the cool against my skin, grounding myself in the present, in the rain, in the story still unfolding between panes of glass and flickers of courage. And on the other side a palm met mine, a mirror, a promise, a connection, no longer just scribbled in the fog, but etched somewhere deeper, somewhere that wouldn't vanish even when the rain stopped again. The morning rain arrived like a sigh, soft and long-awaited. I stood at the window, hand pressed to the cool glass, watching the droplets gather and race each other down the pane. I hadn't seen a foggy message in days, not since Eli's last note. "Coffee? Your window or mine?" I'd smiled when I read it, heart stumbling a little, as it always did when his words appeared. I replied the next morning, writing with slow care, "Mine, next rainy morning." And now, here it was. The knock came gently, 3 measured taps, not rushed, not hesitant. I turned from the window, heart fluttering, and walked barefoot across the wooden floor, my mug still warm in my hand. Through the peephole a flash of yellow, a raincoat, and in his other hand a small thermos, and yes, an umbrella. I opened the door. "Hi," he said. Up close his voice was quiet but warm, like the messages he used to leave me in mist and smudge. His hair was damp, curling slightly at the edges, and his eyes, somewhere between storm gray and hazel, crinkled just a little when he smiled. "Hi," I replied and stepped aside. He entered like someone remembering how to be inside another person's life, cautiously, kindly. I offered him a seat by the window where two mismatched chairs faced one another, our foggy canvas between them. He set down the thermos and handed me a small parcel wrapped in a napkin. "Still prefer tea?" he asked. "Chamomile and honey," I guessed. You guessed right. I took the bundle and unwrapped it to reveal 2 scones, still warm. "I wasn't sure if this was a breakfast kind of visit," he added, sitting across from me. "It's a rainy morning. Anything is allowed," I said. We sipped in silence for a while. Not awkward exactly, more like reverent. The way you don't rush into a museum room that holds something precious. "I almost didn't knock," he admitted, his fingers tracing the rim of his mug. "Why not?" He looked at the window, at the fog still curling around the corners of the glass. "Because some things are so beautiful from a distance, you wonder if they'll stay that way when you're close." I swallowed. "And you? Do you think this," I gestured between us, "will stay beautiful?" He looked at me then, really looked. "I don't know. But I think some connections are meant to risk closeness." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. It surprised me how easily our rhythms found each other. We didn't meet every day, didn't force a routine, but whenever the sky dimmed and rain tapped gently against the rooftops, I knew there was a chance I might hear a knock or a note. Sometimes he'd write, "Reading something good?" on his side of the glass, and I'd reply with the title, backwards and smudged. Other times I'd doodle a little cat for him, his orange tabby, the one I now knew was called Marbles. When we did meet, it was never flashy. We didn't go out much. We stayed in, on one side of the glass or the other. He liked my honey cake. I liked his vinyl collection. He showed me how to play a few chords on his weathered guitar. I showed him the sketchbook where I'd drawn every single one of our misty exchanges. There was one night I remember vividly. The rain was heavier than usual, and thunder rolled somewhere far away like a restless memory. We sat side by side on my small couch, each holding a mug of something warm, and he said, "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd never written that first message." I tilted my head. I think we were both waiting for something to find us. Or someone. Maybe it's the same thing. He turned to me then, closer than ever, and for a moment I thought he might kiss me. But instead he whispered, "You helped me remember how to speak when everything felt too loud." That's when I knew. We'd built something, not just across windows or through fog, but in the quiet, in the space we gave each other to arrive fully, gently. Spring crept in like a shy guest. The rains thinned. The sun returned more often. The windows stayed clearer, and with them, our routines changed. We didn't need the fog to speak anymore, but sometimes on purpose we'd wait for a rainy day. One of us would write something silly or sweet, just for nostalgia's sake. Eli's note, one Sunday morning. Still think rainy days make good listeners? My reply, traced slowly in breath and fingertip. Yes, and some stories only bloom in the mist. We laughed more now, held hands when we walked to the corner cafe, got caught in the rain once without an umbrella and didn't mind. One evening, as I sat sketching by the window, he appeared across the courtyard. No message, just a wave. I waved back. It felt strange now to see him at that distance, to be reminded of the months we spent not knowing each other's voices, only their essence. When he came over later that night, I asked, "Do you miss it, the way we used to talk?" He thought for a while before answering. "I don't miss the distance, but I miss the intentionality, the quiet of it." I nodded. Me too. That night we wrote letters instead of talking, passing them back and forth on slips of folded paper across the table like we were teenagers or time travelers. There's something sacred in the written word. It slows the world down. It makes you mean what you say. Weeks passed, then months. We built a rhythm made not just of rain but of sunlight and shared meals and long walks through the park. He started painting again. I began illustrating a story, ours in a way, a gentle narrative of two people who met through fog and chose to keep seeing each other clearly, even when the mist cleared. I illustrated the first message, his, of course. Rainy days make good listeners. Then mine. And stories need a quiet place to land. Each page held a note, a drawing, a moment. I never said it aloud, but I was making it for us. For the story we might one day tell someone else, or for the story that would simply sit on our shelf, a quiet reminder. Then came the first summer storm. It had been weeks since the last real rain. The air was thick with heat, and the sky that morning looked almost bruised. Around mid-afternoon, thunder cracked through the silence, and rain came down like applause. I ran to the window, heart racing for no good reason. And there it was, a message, written in bold strokes from the other side of the courtyard. Your window or mine? I laughed and dashed to write back. Mine, always mine. 10 minutes later there was a knock. I opened the door to find him, umbrella in hand, hair damp, the same crinkled smile. "Tradition," he said, holding up a thermos. "Welcome back," I replied, pulling him into a hug. We sat by the window as we had so many times before. The glass fogged softly behind us, but we didn't need it to speak anymore. Still, when he got up to leave later that evening, he paused. With his index finger, he wrote something on the misted pane. "Thank you for waiting." I walked over, and beside it I wrote, "You were worth it." He looked at me for a long moment. I still can't believe it started with fog and a quote. Sometimes the quietest beginnings lead to the loudest parts of our hearts. Poet. artist, us. We smiled. Some days I still wake and glance at the window, wondering if he's written anything. Even when he's right beside me, I miss that sliver of magic. But I've learned something important, that magic doesn't vanish when it becomes real. It deepens. It grounds itself. It stays. Our story may have begun in whispers across the mist, but it lives now in every word spoken aloud, every meal shared, every ordinary moment made luminous simply because we're in it together. And every so often, on a rainy day, we still leave each other messages, just to remember, just to honor the fog, just to say, I see you, through the glass and far, far beyond it. And that ends tonight's meditation. You're welcome to stay for a bit longer if you like. Have a beautiful night until next time.